Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm glad you're here. And I hope what you hear today will change your life in some way, shift patterns and things. I'm real excited to talk with our guest, Moni Castaneda, and I'm going to read her biography for you. Um, Moni Castaneda is a Feng Shui consultant, speaker, and author who has devoted over 2 decades to the study and practice of Feng Shui. Moni blends her knowledge of Western architecture with Eastern Feng Shui to help clients turn their current homes into dream homes that support them in every area of their lives. The result of working with Moni is a life you love in a home that makes you proud. That's what I want, Moni.
Yes.
Monet practices Feng Shui as what it was intended to be by the old masters, a branch of ancient Chinese medicine, and she created a method based on the East Asian principles of healing. And she's written several books. Some are manuals or how-to books that go with her courses. And her most recent books talk more about the why of Feng Shui, why it is important to be aware of and have control over your home environment. And her website is 9 Steps to Feng Shui, and you can see that down below. And I also put in a link to her Amazon page that lists some books that you might want to see. So, Moni, thank you so much for joining me today. And
Thank you so much for having me over.
oh, you're very welcome. And I guess I would like to. I've read a little more. I've started reading your room by room book, and I've read a little bit about your history. But could you share whatever you would like with the viewers so that they could understand how your interest developed in this?
Yeah, sure. So, Feng Shui is the ancient East Asian art of space arrangement or art of placement, and it's a few thousand years old. We can actually see, the beginnings of Feng Shui in some Chinese sites that are like 10,000 years old, right? But Feng Shui started to be practiced probably 4 or 5 thousand years ago, but it didn't have a name. And around 2,200 years ago, the term Feng Shui was coined. And at the same time as the term was coined, there was a shift in Feng Shui. There had been an explosion of growth population in cities in China because Feng Shui had originally been created to find a great location for you to thrive and prosper in the country. And so there were certain guidelines of for choosing a site where you can have some guarantee that you're going to do well. So, for example, you needed to be close to water, right? Close to fresh water. And you needed to have some elevation from the water so that you wouldn't get flooded. And because China is in the northern hemisphere, you wanted to have a hill or a mountain at the back so you wouldn't be hit by the cold winds from the north in the winter too harshly. And then the property should be level, so it's easier to farm, and you should have hills on the sides to protect from the winds. That was the ideal Feng Shui site in the country. But when people started living in cities, you couldn't have that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so there was a shift in Feng Shui, like it split into two branches. So the one branch was like, okay, we cannot find proper Feng Shui sites anymore. We have to rely in astrology and numerology to try and give people a good chance to do well. And the other branch of Feng Shui decided, okay, people were not designed to live in these boxes, surrounded by boxes that we call houses, and disconnected from nature. So we're going to try to introduce inside and outside the home the components of a thriving natural environment so that people can still do well and not get disconnected from nature, which brings about a lot of physical and emotional and spiritual problems, right? And so the first one that said, okay, we're going to use astrology and numerology, that is what is now called compass code Feng Shui. And the other branch that said, okay, we're going to try and make sure that we create an environment that mimics a healthy natural environment, that became known as form school, or it was an evolution of form school, which form school was originally devoted to finding good sites in the country. And so Feng Shui originally was part of ancient East Asian medicine. But over time, with especially with this emphasis on doing astrology and numerology and feng shui going from different countries to different countries, and then especially because it was suppressed at some point in China, and it lost its soul, in my opinion. And it became associated with so many superstitions. And when I became interested in feng shui, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so confusing, because you didn't just have experts, teachers saying things that were different. They were saying things that were contradictory to each other.
Hmm.
So I thought I have to go back to the source. Unfortunately, I have a friend who has studied with a very, very ancient school of Chinese medicine, ancient Chinese medicine. It's a very secretive school. They're not very public at all. And she told me, well, feng shui is part of Chinese medicine. And I was like, oh, really? So teach me the basis of Chinese medicine. And so she did. She taught me all the principles of ancient East Asian healing. And then I started to see, okay, how would that apply to the home? And then we did this correlation. Every time I found more information, I would ask her, okay, so as an acupuncturist, as an herbalist, how do you use this in your practice? How do you use this in the human body? And then I would say, okay, so this is probably how you can use it in the home, right? Because the purpose of an acupuncturist is to restore health to the body, to heal. But the purpose of feng shui is to create happiness and good luck. And
Hmm.
so that's how I started. But then I tested. When I first started doing feng shui over 20 years ago, I was in contact with a group of people in South America, in the southern part of South America. I was in contact with people from Ecuador, which is where I'm from. And I also had a group of people in Australia. I had people in the United Kingdom, in Canada, and we all tested the conclusions that I was reaching. We all tested, and we figured out what worked and what didn't. And so over 20 years, I have been refining that process to the point that if you apply my system, which is called the 9 Steps to Feng Shui system, from beginning to end, you have a dream home and a happy
Oh,
life.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Nice. Wow. Um, I have been so geared the last few years. It's only been 5 years that I really came into energy medicine and it
Really?
started my inner healing journey and
Uh-huh.
everything. So a lot of things have been new to me, and so I've studied bits of different things, and but I've been focused on I should say health, but emotional health, right? Physical
Yes.
health, but
Uh-huh.
emotional health through the work, or inner healing health, which is not always the same thing, but involves emotions and stuff.
Mhm.
And but I haven't focused on happiness, and
Wow.
and I think that's missing in what I need to focus on. And
I think so.
so
Yeah,
so
and
thank
so I
you.
think it's really interesting, right? That we what we call today alternative therapies, which are really the original therapies. Um, all of them, they work from the inside out. You first have to bring harmony to your inside, and then that manifests in outward health. And
Right.
there's one exception, and that exception is feng shui. Feng shui is the only healing art that works from the outside in. You make changes in your home in order to produce changes in yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very, very awesome. So, one thing that I was wondering about, in your book, you had said your grandmother had said you've got to learn to trust yourself, right? Did I
And,
say that right? You got to learn to trust yourself, treat
well,
yourself right. You got to learn to. I couldn't read my own writing. I'm
treat
sorry, everyone.
yourself, yes.
You
There's
you've
several
got to
things.
learn to treat yourself right, and that included all these things of your home that surround
Yes.
you, right?
There's two things that my grandmother repeated constantly. One of those is you have to know how to live. and the other one was, you need to learn how to treat yourself. And that was those were the two things that she measured people by. So when I was a child, now let me talk about the book. So Room by Room is a book about how functional homes create functional families, and dysfunctional homes create dysfunctional families, right? And then the other book, The House of Many Gardens, is a book that wants you to reestablish your happiness by reconnecting with nature and feeling the same sense of awe that you felt when you were a child. And in this book, in The House of Many Gardens, I tell the story of how my grandmother, from a very early age, I was probably 2.5 years old, when she started taking me to lunches and tea parties, just visiting people around town. Because back then in Ecuador, I think in all of Latin America, it was more common to visit with people in their homes or in your home than going places to meet them. And so we would go to all these different homes, all sorts of different professions, different financial status and social status. And when we left the home, my grandmother would declare these people knew how to live or they didn't know how to live. And if she said they didn't know how to live, we're never going back. And she would point out, all the positives. For example, she would say, "Did you notice how the curtains were done? Did you notice how this thing matched this other thing?" But she would also point out, "Did you notice that their centerpiece force you to have to move to the sides to try and talk to the person on the other side of the table because it was so large and pompous?" And she would also point out, for example, that the pattern on the runner they put on the coffee table didn't match the curtains, things like that. And so from a very, very early age, I was being trained by my grandmother to understand spaces, and to associate what people did in their homes with how they lived, right? And then the other thing that she was always emphasizing is you have to know how to treat yourself. Because if you don't treat yourself well, why would anyone else treat you well? People are going to be guided by what you show them. If you show them you don't care for yourself, what would be the reasoning to care for you? That was my grandmother's thinking, right? And so that included what you did in your home, the things that you bought, the quality of your furniture, the quality of your china, but also how you dressed, what kind of haircut you got, what kind of products you put on your skin. All of that to her was a show of love for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you loved yourself, then you kind of made it easier for people to love you. And if you loved yourself, it didn't matter as much what other people thought of you. And so my grandmother, she was such
Right.
a remarkable person, when you think about her generation, and the things that she went through. And she still had this really solid perception of herself. And I don't think in my whole life I have met a person with a higher self-esteem than my grandmother.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So, have you found that a lot of what she taught you or what you learned from her um, follows most of your feng shui, or was that part of your
Oh,
program and taking all those things that you learned into
oh,
consideration?
definitely. I studied architecture. I got a degree in architecture in Ecuador, and I came to the United States and found Feng Shui and spent all these years studying Feng Shui. My grandmother never heard the term Feng Shui until she was in her 80s, and I told her about it. But I could have, like everything I teach today, about 80% of what I know, I could just have reverse engineered her house,
Hmm.
and I would have gotten most everything right. Because she came from supreme privilege, right? So my grandmother's grandmother, she had so much money, and her son, my grandmother's father, he married a very modern professional woman. She was one of the first professional women in Ecuador. And so his mom thought she wasn't good enough because she was a feminist, a liberated woman and stuff. And so my great grandmother, she was a pioneer of her time. She was one of the first women in Ecuador to actually get a profession. She was a school teacher, and then she worked in the phone company. And so, but my the father of my grandmother, right, and his mom, they came from what was back then the richest people in Ecuador, which were the landowners, right? This was before there was like an industrial and agrarian revolution in Ecuador. And so her father, my grandmother's father, died when she was 6 years old. And then his mom convinced my great grandmother that she should let her live with her because she would get a better education, she would have better opportunities if she lived with her grandmother, right? And so my grandmother grew up surrounded by these riches, where everything was regulated, where everything had been designed, where there was enough money and resources to get anything and all the professionals you could want to give you advice on how to do in the home, the architects, the designers, and stuff like that. But on weekends, she went to visit her mom, and her mom lived in the country. And so my grandmother was like this prim lady when she during the school week, right? And then in the weekend, she would go to visit her mom and her other relatives, and she was absolutely wild, like absolutely wild. And I tell some of her stories in these books, right? And I think when my grandmother, when she was a young woman, she got married to a military man, and at the time there was a war going on, so they got married, and he got shipped off to war, and then he came back, and it wasn't a good marriage. He was never faithful to her, and he had other families. And so even though he was an engineer and he made good money, the money was never enough because he had to support the other families. And so my grandmother was faced with knowing that she would never be able to have a house like her grandmother had, right? That she would never have the resources. And so she kind of transmuted all her knowledge from growing up with her grandmother to furnishing a regular house. And so she did everything right. She did everything perfect, but it came from this kind of legacy of privilege, right?
Mm-hmm.
Privilege and abundance and comfort. And my grandmother was really good at figuring out, okay, how can I translate that into living well in an ordinary home? And that she did remarkably well. I remember that like people coming into her house, there was always something to be awed by, like that is so beautiful, that is nice. And people loved how she arranged things and how she put things together. And I have often thought about that, because the word privilege can come with a lot of like bad connotations, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the solution for humanity is not to get rid of privilege, but to make sure that all people live with the kind of comfort and the kind of happiness and the kind of harmony that in the past was only associated to privilege.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Very good.
Yeah.
So, what could you talk more about the 9 steps? I mean, that's the name of your website, right? The name of your
Yes, and the name of
system.
my system is the 9 steps to Feng Shui system. So when I was studying the principles of ancient Chinese medicine or ancient East Asian medicine, um, I was given 9 principles, right? And then I was like, okay, how can I apply this to the home? And then I started working on it. And in the beginning, I was thinking maybe the order doesn't matter. Maybe you just do whatever you feel is more important at any given moment. But later on, I realized that if you actually follow the steps, if you follow the order, the results are so much better.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the first, do you want me to go through the principles?
Yeah, if you'd like
Yeah.
to. If you'd like to
Okay.
share it, I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so important, and for some people, every time they watch a video or they listen to a podcast, that might be the only time they get exposed to this information. So I think it's
Sure.
important to go through it. So the first requirement for health is a wholeness, right? If you have all your body parts, you are going to be healthy. But if you, for example, have had a surgery that removed a body part, your body's not going to function the same way. Like, for example, if somebody has their gallbladder removed, they can still continue to have a really good, positive, healthy life, but they're going to have to make adjustments because there's an organ that used to do something that's not there anymore. So in Feng Shui, we want to make sure your floor plan is complete. So a complete floor plan would be a square or a rectangle, and an incomplete floor plan will be a floor plan that is a C shape or an L shape or an irregular shape, right? And so we want to make sure that it doesn't mean you're going to have to remodel another room to your L-shaped home, but you create the impression on the outside and the inside that the home is complete. What that does for the person is it gives them a sense that even though their life is not everything they want it to be right now, they already have been given all that they need to make it happen. Because
I like it.
the worst thing that can happen to a person is to think that no matter how much effort they put into something, it's not going to happen for them.
Right,
And
right.
so completing the floor plan has the effect of taking you from making excuses for why your life is the way it is to actually making plans and having a strategy to take your life to where you want it to be. So that's the first principle. The second principle is yin and yang. I think most people these days have heard about yin and yang. And so in Chinese medicine, you use yin and yang, like you look at excesses and deficiencies. So, for example, if a person has high blood pressure, that's an excess. If they have low blood pressure, that is a deficiency. Right? So, in the home, you look for anything that's too much or too little. So, for example, if you have a basement where the ceiling is too low, that's the yin yang problem.
Okay.
If you have, so common in new homes, if you have a great room where you have a double high ceiling, that's too much, that's too high. So that's also a
Okay.
problem. So in Feng Shui, we use lamps, light, colors, art to make it seem like your low ceiling is higher and to make it seem like your high ceiling is lower so you don't lose the human scale.
Okay.
It's very common, when you go into these new homes and they have the great room and they have the double height ceilings. People tell you they love the room, and if I ask them how much time do you spend in this room every week, and they say, "Oh, well, and hardly no time at all," and it's because the space is not comfortable, it's not cozy because it has lost the human scale. So when you do step two, you're trying to bring balance into a home. Lack of balance results in drama, when the person is drawn to drama, when they make everything bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandmother used to say, which is a Spanish saying, it's like oh, that person likes to drown in a glass of water. And so that's drama, right? So you don't want the drama, you want a harmonious life. So for example, another example of imbalance is a very long and narrow hallway. So the narrow hallway and the long and narrow hallway makes you feel like things take too long and that there's no alternatives, right? So in Feng Shui, you were to make the hallway feel wider and not as long.
Okay.
And so the typical, there's such a common decorating idea where you put a mirror at the end of the hallway
Hmm.
that makes it seem twice as long, right?
Right. Right.
Whereas if you put the mirror on the side of the hallway, that makes it feel twice as wide, which is a good thing.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's step number two is about bringing balance. Step
Okay.
number three is about chi. Chi is the life force, and it's expressed negatively as fatigue. So when the person feels like as soon as they get home, they feel tired. So you may have felt this or known people who tell you this, that when they're outside, they feel like I'm going to go home and I'm going to go do this, and that. And then when they get home, they feel like impinged upon, like they're like, oh, I don't have energy. I'm just going to go take a nap. So that means the home is not energizing you. A home should energize you instead of depleting you. And in Feng Shui, that has to do because Qi comes in through your main door mostly. And so when Qi, like air, comes in, you want it to circulate and go into every room of the home. And sometimes the Qi doesn't accumulate in front of your house, it doesn't come in, or as soon as it comes in, it goes out the back door, if you have a front door and a back door facing each other. And so we look at how to guide your attention, because chi follows attention from the moment you open the door. Make sure you see something beautiful, and then guide your eyes through the home so that the energy stays in the home. Step number 4 is about being in rhythm, being in connection with the winds and waters. Feng Shui literally means wind and water, the currents of society, the natural currents. So, for example, you can't just decide, I'm going to start a garden today. You have to wait for the right moment to start a garden. Like if you try to start a garden in January, you're probably not going to do so well as if you started in March or April, and depending on where you live, right? And so good luck is about being at the right place at the right time. And for you to be at the right place and the right time, you need to know what time it is. You need to know what season it is. And so in Feng Shui, we work on the windows. So your windows, your window treatments. And a lot of people in the United States are like allergic to curtains or blinds. They don't want to have any kind of covers on their windows at all. And especially if they have a beautiful view, right? But at night, if you don't have window treatments, that becomes a black rectangle, and that depletes your energy, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and so having the right kind of curtains or blinds, mini blinds are not a good solution, right? But if you have curtains that open and close easily, something like cellular blinds, that gives you control over how much light, how much sunshine comes in the home, and also what you can see to the outside and what people can see to the inside. And so it's about timing. So step 4 is about timing and being in tune with the natural rhythms.
Okay.
So number 5 is about the 5 elements, and it has to do with harmony. So in Eastern philosophy and healing arts, we have water, wood, fire, earth, and metal, which is different than the elements that we use in the, so for example, in our Western astrology.
Right.
And so each of these elements, water, wood, fire, earth, and metal, is associated with a family of colors. And according to the theory, some of those colors go really well with each other, and some of those colors clash.
Okay.
And so the easiest way to make sure you have harmony in the colors of your home is to follow the principles of the 5 elements and their relationships. And what this does in the home is it reduces arguments. When there's a clash in the colors of your home, of your space, when there's clashes in color, shapes, and materials, you're going to be more irritable, and you're going to be more likely to argue with your family members. So we work on harmonizing color, shapes, and materials to harmonize relationships. Step number 6 has to do with sound and vibration. It's about the language of the home. There's a Chinese saying that goes like this: everything in your home is talking to you. Make sure they have nice things to say.
Yeah, I like that.
And especially the things on your walls, they're saying things about you and to you. And so if you control the messages that your home is giving you, especially through art, family photos, and mirrors, you're going to make sure that you are told good stories, because it's no good if you come to your home and your home is telling you you're a slob, you're unorganized, you don't have taste, life is gloom, there's no future. Sometimes people put beautiful photos in their homes of dead trees, right? And so they're giving, you're reducing your hope when you put that kind of an image in a home, right? And so family photos, they show your love, your affiliations. I can tell who's the favorite child within 5 minutes of walking into a home.
Really?
Yeah, just by the way the photos were displayed.
Interesting.
I have never been wrong. I have been to homes, and the wife told me, not even my husband knows I have a favorite.
Huh.
Yeah,
Wow.
and that's by the way, the size of the photos, the type of the photo, where you put them, how you frame them, and that shows, right? And then also mirrors. You'll see that in every single scary movie, there's a broken mirror or a mosaic mirror or a mirror that distorts something. In every thriller, you see people looking at themselves in a way that is distorting the image, right? So all your mirrors in your home should be faithful to the truth. Whenever you look in a mirror, it needs to look really good. And so that is step number 6, is making sure your home is giving you good messages, supporting you. Because if you don't, that leads to self-sabotage. Then step number 7, right, or principle number 7 is about coming to terms with history, coming to terms with the past, which is an essential requirement for healing. As you, you specialize in this, you're not just
Right.
looking at the past of the person, you're looking at the past of their ancestors, how their ancestors
Hmm.
affect their current life. And so in Feng Shui, that is clutter. When you
Oh,
clutter, you are not making sense of the past, because I actually define clutter as decisions that have been delayed,
okay.
because you're not dealing with the past, you know?
Ah,
And so
interesting.
when you have a garage that has become a junk room, that's thousands of decisions you didn't make at the moment that have now accumulated. And that is why it's so grueling to go in there, because it's just all those decisions, and decisions consume calories and they're hard to do, right? And
Yeah.
so for you to heal properly, you have to make sense of the past. You have to come to terms with it. You have to be okay with it. And so in Feng Shui, in my system, we declutter and simplify, not so people can have less, but so people can make room for their passions. Make room for your passions. And actually, we do it through beauty. I have found over 20 years of practicing Feng Shui that if you don't incorporate beauty into a home, people won't organize. They won't tidy up. They won't clean and organize. When you start introducing beauty, they start doing it automatically.
Interesting.
Which is a huge problem when you look at most organization items. When you go to the store and you say, I'm going to organize my papers, I'm going to organize my clothes or toys, themselves, they're not pretty. These objects, they're not pretty. And so that ends up increasing the clutter in the home instead of reducing the clutter. And so that's step number 7, coming to terms with the past, which is declutter to find your passions. And step number 8 has to do with the psychological meaning of all the corners and the midpoints in your home,
Hmm.
which is what we know in Feng Shui as the 9 life areas, and is based on 9 natural, 8 natural powers in the world plus the void, right? And so in Feng Shui, we use a tool called the Bagua map, which is like a tic-tac-toe that divides your home into 9 squares or 9 rectangles, and each of those has a significance. Now, in compass code Feng Shui that I had mentioned before, they do that by the compass direction. So they tell you to the north is your career, to the south is your reputation. But the
Hmm.
way we do it in Feng Shui, practiced as a branch of Chinese medicine, we apply the Bagua map by aligning the bottom of the Bagua map with your front door.
Okay.
And that is associated, I actually have a super popular video on YouTube that explains this. That is associated with the location of the organs in the body. So your
Okay.
career area is at the bottom of the Bagua map. And it is, if you have the Bagua map like this and you put it flat on the home, to your tic-tac-toe. And so that is the front center of the home. Your reputation is at the back center of the home, and that is associated with the location of your heart.
Hmm.
The life areas that in Feng Shui we know as health and wealth, which are in the middle and the back on the left side of the home when you look at it from across the street, those are associated with the location of the liver and the gallbladder in your body. And so the way I use the Bagua map is based on biology, which means it's also based on psychology, because in ancient Chinese healing, in ancient East Asian healing, there is no separation between what happens in your body and what happens in your psyche. So
Right.
each organ is associated to certain emotions and things like that. And so in Feng Shui, we assign these life areas to different points in the home. And then you place reminders of your goals in those spots in your home to turn your home into a 3-dimensional vision board,
Oh, fun. Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
super, super powerful, right? And then principle number 9 is the principle of empowerment through position. So in Feng Shui, we call something that's called the power position, and which is when you're in a room, you need to be able to see the door while not being right in front of the door, because that gives you the control of the room. And so, for example, today, most people, they buy a desk, they push the desk against the wall, and then they put a chair. So when they're working on their computer, they're facing the wall, They don't have a view of the room behind them, and which means part of their mind is concerned with somebody could come behind them and scare them. And so in Feng Shui, we have these rules for how you position furniture in the home to create the maximum productivity, the maximum relaxation, maximum rest. So we apply this to how to place the bedroom furniture, the living room furniture, dining room. So it all has rules based on this idea that you need to live an empowered life. And also in the definition of health in ancient East Asian medicine, you need to be happy and free. Those are conditions, right? You need to be whole, happy, and
Nice.
free.
That's beautiful. Oh, that's
Yeah.
now I do have that feng shui thing right because I'm sitting at my desk facing the wall, but I'm using a small vanity thing, and so the back against the wall is a large mirror.
So you
So
have a mirror so you can see behind you, so you are
yeah,
not disempowered. Yeah,
it is
that's
empowered.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
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 because I didn't do that to start with, and then I changed it, and what a difference it made. Yeah,
yeah. It is huge.
it is. Yeah,
You don't realize how much of your mind is trying to guess what's happening behind you by the noises, by the smells, you know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you talked about the 9 steps, but then I think it's your room by room book. You go through 8 rooms,
Yes.
and so
Yeah.
could you talk about the similarities
Sure,
or
sure. You know, so there's two things and that come into play and can make feng shui complex. Is that you apply this Bagua map like a tic-tac-toe, and you assign, you know, for example, at the back you have wealth, reputation, and marriage. At the front you have wisdom, career, and travel, and in the middle you have health, good luck, and creativity. But these life areas are also expressed in the rooms in the home, and your rooms in the home, you know, every home is going to be different, and you're going to have them located in different spots in your home. And so, for example, if you want to go room by room, the career area is expressed in your foyer, your entrance, right? And so your entrance, as soon as you open the door, your entrance tells you how well you are doing. If there's one place in your home where you need to have expensive furniture, it's your foyer. Now, that doesn't mean you have to pay a lot of money for it. You know, there's so many good ways. You know, you can go to salvage stores, you can buy secondhand, you can go to thrift stores and stuff. But you need to open your door and tell yourself, I'm doing well. That's super important. And the room in the home that expresses how a couple relates to each other and how you relate to people you see as equals, as partners, peer relationships. That is the primary bedroom.
okay?
Right? The room in the home where you express health and family is the dining room. Families are made in the dining room, not in the family room. You know, they're built and strengthened in the dining room. Actually, family dinners are the number one predictor of college success.
Wow.
The room in the home that represents the wealth area is the kitchen, because the kitchen is a factory, you know. Actually, there's
Huh.
some. Go on.
No, you said the kitchen reflects the wealth.
Yes.
Okay. Huh.
So in society, wealth is traditionally in society, wealth is expressed in the ownership of land, which means farming, right, or the ownership of industry,
Okay.
factories. And so in feng shui, the symbol of wealth is the forest, the living forest. In the home, that is expressed in the kitchen because the kitchen is production. There's actually some fascinating videos that were made in I think the 1950s in the United States. There was actually a government organization that was putting a lot of research into creating the perfect kitchen. And they actually had scientists studying and testing to create the perfect kitchen. And that's one reason, if you look at appliances from that era, they were so much better designed than our appliances today are. And,
Yeah.
and so they were looking, and they actually talk about the kitchen is a factory of producing food. And so the kitchen is associated with wealth also because the kitchen is often the most expensive part of the home to build.
Mm.
By
Yeah, well,
square footage,
right.
it's a lot more expensive because you usually have more expensive floors. You have cabinetry that is expensive. You have the appliances that are expensive, backsplashes, the tile, whatever you use. The kitchen is expensive to build, and it's the symbol of wealth in a home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ah,
And then the room
wow.
that expresses your social life, fame, reputation, social life is the family room, living room, great room, whatever you call it. In most modern homes, you have one integrated room that is like room for socializing. In older, more traditional homes, you had the living room and the family room,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
In new homes, they're integrated that into what they call the great room. But where it used to be the place where you received visitors, right? And today
Right.
it's not that anymore. You mostly are going to share time with your family. But how you arrange your family room or your living room determines how sociable you're going to be in life. So a lot of, especially young people in the United States, I had seen, people that are putting their first apartment together, they focus on the sofa and the TV. They get
Oh,
a
yeah.
TV that is
Right.
as large as they can afford, a sofa that is as comfortable as they can get, and they put them facing each other. So it's
Hmm.
kind of like a movie theater. If
Right.
you set up your home to be like a movie theater, you're going to spend more time home watching movies, watching TV, playing video games, and
Hmm.
you're not going to spend as much time trying to socialize with other people. So having this arrangement can seriously affect your social life, and your social life is kind of the secret of success. We need relationships to be successful. Many times, the good job doesn't come from you reading an ad on a website. It comes from a friend telling you there's an opening at my place.
Hmm.
And so every room, the home office is associated to learning. There's a life area we call
Okay.
wisdom, self-knowledge, and rest. So did I say the home gym or the home office?
Home office. You had
Yeah,
said.
did I say home office? For a moment, I was confused. Yeah, yeah. And so if you have an arts and crafts room, that represents your creativity, but also children's rooms represent your creativity if you have children. And so
Mm-hmm.
each of the rooms in the home has a function, and that is independent from where they are in the home, whether at the front or the back, the left side or the right side. And so by working on your home room by room, you can make huge changes. I actually have a program which is called the Dream Home Lab. And in that program, it has two parts. One part is courses, and the other part is guidance. So when you join the Dream Home Lab, I actually have lessons that I have done for every room in the home. So, for example, if you're talking about the primary bedroom, we talk about, okay, what are the essential pieces of furniture you need to have in that room? What are the colors that are recommended? How should you position the bed? How should you arrange it? How should you decorate it? What kind of art is okay or not okay to have in the primary bedroom and things like that? So we do that room by room. And we also have recordings of when we first released this program, which was in 2020. I actually filmed the critiques because in the Dream Home Lab, people are able to submit photos of their homes and ask questions. And then on Thursdays, we do these live meetings. And in those live meetings, I answer their questions and give them suggestions on what to do. And so it's because it's a group program, it's affordable, and people actually get to meet other people, and people learn so much from watching the critiques of other people's places too.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I have seen such wonderful transformations in that group. The way people have grown, and because we started in 2020, what was going on at that time, and the degree of happiness the people experienced in the group was just amazing. Because instead of focusing on the news or what was happening outside and being locked down and stuff, they were
Mhm.
focusing on creating more beauty in their homes. So every person that participated, they did so much better than they would have if they were not putting their focus in creating new homes. And now we're coming into another kind of critical time, which is I don't know if you follow the Chinese horoscope.
Mm.
The 2025 is known as the year of the snake, because in the Chinese horoscope they have instead of like we have our zodiacal astrology, and we have the signs month by month,
Right.
have them year by year. So we do
Okay.
the months, and they do, so every year it changes to a different animal. Right now, the year of the dragon is changing because they do by the lunar year, right? So January 29 is the beginning of the year of the snake. The previous year was the year of the dragon.
Okay.
And so I do these forecasts of what the year is going to be like, but looking at all the that I know from ancient East Asian knowledge and medicine, right? So I'm not an astrologer or anything like that. But I started doing this because a lot of people, they go to these sites and they're so fear-inducing, like there's going to be all these catastrophes this year. And so I started doing that so my followers would actually have something to look at the forecast of the year just by analyzing what the energies are like. And so one of the things is, they have the animals. So first was the legend says that the Emperor of Heaven called all the animals before there was time. There was no time. So he called all the animals and decided that the first 12 animals to arrive would be given a year. And then we would start tracking time. And so the first animal to arrive was the rat that had traveled on the head of the ox. The ox should have been first. They had to cross a big river. And so the rat told the ox, I'm so little, you have to help me. Let me ride on your head. And so they crossed the river. And when they got to the temple of the Jade Emperor, the rat jumped and was there before the ox, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so after the ox, and before I tell you something wrong, let me bring it up, if that's okay.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And so first was the rats, second was the ox. And I'm trying to think who was third. I think third was the tiger. Yeah, third was the tiger. Then was the rabbit. The rabbit crossed the river by jumping from rock to rock. Then came the dragon. And the dragon, even though it could fly and should have been first, was late because it stopped to help the farmers by creating rain. Then came the snake. Then after the snake is the horse, the goat, the monkey, the rooster, the dog, and the pig. And so that's how they organize time, in the Chinese calendar by assigning a year to each of these animals. And so the year of the snake is characterized by the undulating movement. A snake can't go in a straight line. It's impossible for the snake to travel that way. And so the snake actually undulates from left to right. And also, you remember how I told you about the 5 elements: water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. So every year it has an animal and it also has an element.
Okay.
So this year, 2025, is the year of the wood snake. And wood is not a plank of wood, it's the woods, the forest snake. It is also associated with the wind. So I don't know, like, are you into shamanism at all?
No, I don't believe so, but go ahead. Yeah, I haven't studied shamanism.
All right. So actually, the ancient Chinese medicine and American shamanism have the same roots.
Okay.
Which, when I first started studying Feng Shui, and I had also studied shamanism, you were talking about the books of Carlos Castaneda and stuff, and I found so many similarities. But then I found out they actually have the same root. And so in the wood snake is the plume snake. It's almost like a flying snake or a snake that is rising from the land. And so what that would mean is that there's going to be like a resurgence of the wisdom of the native people of the Americas, who were really in tune with the earth, were really in tune with nature, which is what we need right now, because I believe the biggest challenge that we are facing as a species is pollution. We're just trashing the planet as a species, right? And what we need right now is for that wisdom to rise of the people that saw themselves as one with the land. And so I think that's hopefully more people will start feeling like they're not the owners of the earth, but the stewards of the earth. and that they have a responsibility to all living beings. In Feng Shui, and actually, I have a whole chapter about trees in this
Mm-hmm.
book. And so in Feng Shui, we see trees as the people of the vegetable kingdom. And trees are believed to send messages to heaven,
Yes.
the,
Yeah.
the spiritual world, right? And so that's why if you take a nap under the tree or just sit under a tree to read a book or do your exercises or do some Tai Chi or Qigong under a tree, you feel so good. It's because of you establish a full spiritual connection. So in Feng Shui, we say that humans connect heaven to earth. We get ideas from heaven, which is inspiration. We um, motivate ourselves through emotions, and then we act in order to produce things on earth, right? But the
Right.
trees are the messengers from the earth to heaven. So they pull things from their roots, they go up the trunks, and then they release these aerosols into the air. So that's why they're considered to be connectors to heaven. And so many problems that humanity is facing right now could be solved or ameliorated by just planting more trees.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I do a program for not the solstice, the equinoxes each year. I call it Friend a Tree, and
Oh,
try to help people learn to send their intentions through the trees to spread throughout the
that's
universe.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, like about this generational thing that you do.
Hmm.
Like, would you explain a little bit of like, because you do healing, right? You do
Right.
healing,
I
ancestral
work
healing.
in the biofield, the human biofield, and with tuning forks, and the sound waves from the tuning forks act as biofeedback to the body and intersect with stuck energy that's caused
Mhm.
from emotions that we feel, where it stops the flow of chi within your biofield, right? Or
Yeah,
your energy flow within your body. And so that when it interconnects, when the sound waves hit a pocket of this dissonant energy, then it makes a dissonant sound. And so the
mm,
mind hears it and realizes it's not in flow, and releases the stuck energy to
that's
let it flow
beautiful.
again. And it changes your old patterns, because it removes the
Yeah,
blocks that were formed at certain times in your life. And beyond our own biofield then is the ancestral field, which extends, our own biofield extends about 5 to 6 feet away from your body, and the ancestral
uh-huh.
field extends about 30 to 35 feet from your body.
Wow, I didn't know
And
that.
yeah, and so I had started, when first started this work, within weeks or within days, really, after being trained, then ancestors started coming to me. And I started working more and more in the ancestral field, not even knowing it was the ancestral field. And
Uh-huh.
so, but um, beside changing our lives, I know that I feel, as I work with the ancestors, we're changing their lives too. The past, we're changing the
Yeah,
time continuum of the
yes,
universe, right? And
yeah.
for our children. And they also come here because what I had discovered after working a while is that ancestors transition into the next realm through positive ley line vortexes. There might be other ways too, but that's one of the ways, because of the high positive energy within the ley line vortex,
Mhm.
that they transition. And I have a vortex in the room. And so when I
Oh,
started this work and found out I'm working in spirit, and then spirit started coming, and then they transition to the next realm, because there's enough of their stuck energy is released that it raises their voltage, and combined with our positive intentions to help, it's a high enough voltage for them to transition through the ley line.
that's pretty cool. There's actually a life area in Feng Shui that is health family, which includes ancestors, health family, community, and ancestors. And Feng Shui is also one way to heal your ancestors, because ancestor honoring ancestors, is a huge part of East Asian culture, and it's also part of their medicine. Because if so many things are inherited, you inherit the the physical characteristics, right? But you also inherit certain emotional and mental patterns. And you
Absolutely.
continue doing things in the same way your ancestors did them, you're
Hmm.
going to have similar results, right? And so Feng Shui, in a way, allows you to change your family tree because you build a functional home, and that helps you create a functional family. And if you don't have kids, if your kids are already gone, you're still creating an environment where the family is healed. And that doesn't just apply to you, it applies to your ancestors, right? and,
Yes. Yeah.
and it can also apply to your extended family. So for example, if you do healing that touches your grandmother, also your aunts and uncles and all your cousins also benefit.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Just like the biofield work.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's um so how, let's see, I lost my train of thought. It was about the ancestors. How does, I had read or heard um like the very first feng shui I was learning about a number of years ago,
Mhm.
they said antiques were not good to have in your house. That was kind of the, I guess because it tied you to the past more. But it was
Yeah.
like in honoring my family, my
Mhm.
ancestors, I treasure the furniture that my grandparents had, that their grandparents had.
Yes, and so the life force that we're talking about, right? Like chi,
Hmm.
is what makes up your energy field. What makes your biofield is the chi, and chi contains information. It contains information about your life, about your ancestors, about your happenings to you in this lifetime. If you believe that you have lived other lives, that could
Hmm.
also be part of that. And so there's this interrelation, right, between your body, your actions, your home, your life. This is so embarrassing. I kind of lost the gist of your question as I was.
Oh, no, that's fine. Um, is it in how you feel in feng shui, or for the healing that you do with
Antique.
feng shui?
Yes,
And
antiques.
are
I'm
antiques
so
okay,
sorry.
right? How
It's
can
the
we use antiques in that we treasure in
Yes,
as a way of
yeah.
honoring those relationships with
It
our
came back to
ancestors?
me, and I apologize.
No, no problem. No
That
problem.
postmenopausal mind sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the chi, the point I was trying to make is your chi, your energy field, it charges all the objects in your home.
Hmm.
The
Right.
objects like this cup, that are smooth and shiny and stuff like that, they absorb less chi. A book made of paper absorbs more chi. A
Okay.
piece of wooden furniture absorbs chi. A cushion absorbs a lot more chi. And so
Okay.
the energy of people gets stored in their belongings. And
Hmm.
so
Right.
it could be good or it could be bad. And some people, I train my students because I train people to become Feng Shui consultants. I train them to feel the energy of objects so that they
Hmm.
can see if this object is worth keeping as is, or if you need to clear it before you keep it. So you can go to an antique shop, right, or a secondhand shop, and you can feel the energy of the object. And
Hmm.
even if the object has bad energy, you can still clear it. You can do a cleanse. You can physically clean it with something that has like a really penetrating, uplifting scent. Like lemon, lime. You
Hmm.
can sage it. You can use some scent like an essential oil with frankincense. These things that break up the dense energies. And you can clear it with sound. I have some clearing recordings, so you can clear with sound all the negative energies and frequencies, and you can still keep the object and you can enjoy it. But even more than that, if you go to a secondhand shop, sometimes you can feel, if for example, if you want to increase your wealth, getting an object that has belonged to a really wealthy person can bring in the energy of wealth into your home.
Okay.
And so it,
Right.
it can be really positive. Now, I think people say that, like for to be on the safe side, because most people are not going to be able to know what kind of energy comes in a piece of furniture, because most people are not going to be able to know how to clear or cleanse that piece of furniture. it's like a blanket statement or advice to say just don't do antiques, right? But an antique
Okay.
can actually be very beneficial. One of the things, and I was telling you about my grandmother's grandmother, who was, um, I think, the kind of rich that most ordinary people like us we can't even imagine. And so my grandmother inherited a vanity from her, like it was like a dresser slash vanity that had been carved by hand. It was really, really beautiful. It
Mm-hmm.
had a large mirror, and this mirror, like I not actually understand how it worked, but my great grandmother said it was rock crystal. Like it didn't matter how far you walked from the mirror never distorted.
Hmm.
Which most mirrors, even really good mirrors
Yeah.
that you buy today, you might not feel the distortion, just maybe 20 feet away from the mirror. But if you keep going to 30, 40 feet, you're going to feel that distortion. It wasn't like that with this mirror.
Mhm.
And so that dresser vanity being in my grandmother's home brought the energy of her grandmother with it. When it was passed on to me later on, that came to me, right? And so we can actually, there's a lot of positive things that can come from something like that. Now you also have to be careful. You have to be careful, and you need to be able to clear any negative energies that have been attached to an object.
Okay. All right. Well, good to know. Yeah, good to know. Um,
And especially, I mean, if it gives you a good feeling, that's all you need to know.
yes. Yeah. Very, very good. Yeah. I just have a number of antiques that, were from my grandparents, and they're just special. Life isn't quite the same because I lived without them for a few years. I put them in storage
Yeah.
um, and um, I'm thankful to have them back. And it just made life feel better.
Yeah, especially if you have positive associations, you have good memories of your grandparents. That's an amazing piece of feng shui to have with you.
Yeah, good. That's
Yeah,
great to know. So, could we talk a little bit then about the garden? And
sure, sure. Because this is my latest book, right? The House of Many Gardens. So the first house that I remember, I was 2 years old, and I remember the house because of the gardens that attracted all these beautiful living beings. Because it was a house. I thought it was my grandmother's house. Like she owned the house, right? So it was a house that had been the estate of Vanity Farm is the only way I can find to translate it. So it had been like a farm that was for the pleasure of the owners, not a farm that was devoted to cultivating and selling to make money out of it. And
right,
so it had been, at some point, it had been in the outskirts of town, but the city had grown around it, and they had started selling the farm until all that was left was the estate and the gardens that were designed around the estate. So it was almost the whole block. I was I was crushed when at 5 years old we moved away from it, and I learned that it was actually a rental, because I always thought of that as my grandmother's house, right? But it was made from adobe bricks, and so the walls were about 12 inches thick or more, which gave you like every windowsill was a place you can actually have a garden in your windowsill. You could have a window seat, or you can, and mostly they were turned into gardens, right? And so this relationship with the earth, just having a home that is made of dirt, you know, um, and of course it was very old, and that was the way the Spanish built their houses before we had concrete and blocks. And so I remember so much of it, like I remember what the patio stones were like, because I used to chase after lizards. And I remember the flower beds and the herb garden and the vegetable garden, because of the bunnies and all the things that were there that I chased after.
uh-huh,
And the thing that stays with me, from the House of Many Gardens, is that feeling I had as a child that the world was perfect. There was nothing. There's nothing amiss. Everything was beautiful. Everything was safe. And if you ask most people, if you ask them what's your first memory of enjoying nature, or when you ask them what is your favorite childhood memory, it usually involves nature. They will tell you, oh, when my grandfather used to take me fishing, or when I was helping my grandmother with the garden. It's always associated with nature. And that sense of awe and wonder that you have as a child,
Yes.
that is my objective in writing this book, that when people plan their gardens, their landscaping today, they recover that, so that they create spaces around their homes where they can actually enjoy it. you know Sometimes you see people, they hire a landscaper, and they end up with a gorgeous place where there's nothing to do. So it's a place that's kind of like a painting, to be enjoyed visually from a distance, but not a place to be in. So I talk a lot in the book about how you can create outdoor spaces that you can use. And so, for example, my kids and I last summer, we built a patio around our house, and the first patio we had bought, that it was store bought and it was much smaller. It didn't include us. So when that one was too old and we needed to replace it, we made one big enough that we can be there. you know and so we can be there sitting on a chair with a cat on our lap, petting the cat. It's such a different experience, right?
Yeah.
And we have places in our home. We have a couple of spots in our home that get good sunshine. So we have this we got these extra large cotton towels. And so if there's a good weather and there's sunshine, we run outside and we put the towels on the floor so we can get sunshine, so we can get grounded, so we can feel the earth. We have a beautiful maple tree, a red maple tree in our front yard. So we built a tree bench around it that is big enough that you can lie down on it and take a nap. So all these things that you do, uh, building a fire pit, just encourage you to be outside more, because we should be spending at least 1 hour a day outside, and we don't.
Especially in the winter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
in the winter you kind of have an excuse, right? Like in the winter, maybe you can go out there 10 minutes before you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm freezing. But even when the weather is nice, most people don't have their outside of their home set up for outdoor living. So I want you to
Right.
start thinking about outdoor living and enjoying life and getting that connection with nature, which is also a connection to heaven. In Feng Shui, we say humans are the connectors. Humans and trees, are the connectors of heaven and earth. And heaven is the world of ideas, where inspiration comes from. That thing that we don't know exactly what it is, but we know created and protects us. And then there's also the energy of the earth, which is the planet we live in, that gave us the body, and that gives us everything that we need. And so, as I was saying before, happiness and freedom are part of the definition of health in ancient Chinese medicine,
Hmm.
and also in the sense of feng shui. So I talk about outside gardens, but also inside gardens. Like, can you turn your windowsills into inside gardens? Can you have house plants that help you clean the air?
I like in, let's see, I'm reading the room by room. You had described, I think, that adobe house that you just talked about a little bit
Yeah.
ago, but that you had a courtyard in the middle, that all the rooms opened into this courtyard, or was that a
No,
different house maybe?
that was a different house. It wasn't specifically in the adobe house that we lived in, but some of the house we visited, with my grandmother, were in the historic part of the city. The buildings that the Spanish built when they first founded the city,
Mhm.
and they were done the Spanish style, where all the rooms are around the lot and the gardens are actually inside. It was just such a beautiful experience, because you could be outside, and it's a commercial district, and the noise of the buses and the people and the merchants, and then you would walk into these inner patios, and the sound from the outside was completely gone, and you felt this
Yeah.
peace and this calm. It was just such a beautiful thing to see and to experience.
Yeah, well, I was trying to figure out, wow. I mean, I really see that as something that's been lost
Yeah,
in our modern lives, right? I mean, I'm blessed to have a large yard. It's a half acre, and we have it.
awesome.
Yeah, we have it planted in all sorts of garden stuff as for produce, but we
Yeah,
grow what we want, and we
yeah,
only take. I mean, it's not
that's
like a
beautiful.
it's not necessarily for production, although
Yeah,
part of the reason's production, but it's mainly because we love it.
yeah.
And so we grow what we want, what we love. But to actually have a courtyard or even a greenhouse, in the middle of the house that you could do barefoot grounding in during the winter here. Oh,
Wouldn't that be
wow.
awesome?
I
Yeah,
would love that. Yeah. So
yeah.
if we ever build a house, I'm going to try to figure out how to do
What
that.
state are you in?
Kansas. So we
So,
really get
so
the
my,
brunt of all the weathers. Yeah. Winter and
yeah.
summer.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because obviously these Spanish style houses, they come from the Mediterranean area.
Mhm.
I don't know how that translates, like even I'm in Tennessee. I don't know how that would translate actually having an open space in the middle of the home, in the winter, with I'm not sure, but I know that you can create indoor gardens even without having that opening,
Mhm.
right? You can turn every window into a garden.
Yeah.
And also this is another thing that is really interesting in feng shui, right? So for example, behind me, you see this is it's a screen. It has a reproduction of a Van Gogh image of a tree, with flowering.
Okay.
Um, I think maybe it's a peach tree or something like that in the flowering stage. And so even having images of nature in your home calms your soul.
Mhm.
So because I know, somebody's listening to us and they live in an 8th floor apartment in a tiny suite, and they're like, "That's not for me." I don't have a balcony. My window sills are too thin. That's not for me. But even having a picture, a photo, a painting of a beautiful garden is going to help you reconnect with nature. And we need that. We need
We
to see
do.
the colors of nature, the images of nature, and even things like, when I was a child and there were the lizards and the bunnies and the different things, the birds. And so even having like little figurines of those things in your home is going to reach your soul in a special place,
Yes.
where your childhood treasured those things. Your inner child still treasures them, right? And so there's always a way that you can improve your home. It doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter how large your home is. And I think that was kind of like the gift my grandmother gave me that I can give to other people. That she grew up in a home where everything was designed by professionals, and she got the gist of it. And then
Mhm.
she turned around and then she answered the question, how can I turn my ordinary home into a place that is as amazing? That is a place that, where I can enjoy all the things that I enjoyed when I was growing up, but in a way that is accessible to a lot of people, not just to the very few. And,
Right.
uh, and as I said, 80% of what I know through feng shui, I could just have reverse engineered from her home. And so like, this book in the room by room book, I'm talking about how my grandmother's house was full of love and her home had good feng shui. And my parents' home, they were very abusive and neglectful, and their home had really bad feng shui. And that always was noticeable to me as a child, the contrast between the spareness and the emptiness of my parents' foyer compared to the designed foyer of my grandmother, where you came into a beautiful rug, where on the side there was this entry table with a nice mirror, where you felt welcome every time you came to her home.
Mhm.
Whereas my parents' home said, go away. And
Right.
that was just the entrance. But when you look at the way the family room was organized, and that contrast was very obvious to me as a child. And I often wondered if my parents did things like my grandmother did, would they act differently? And now I know they would have.
They would have. Wow.
Yeah.
So if someone wanted to get started and um, perhaps they're on a shoestring budget, so that,
Yeah.
and don't have a lot to put toward it, what what would you advise them as the one or two things that they could really do
Yeah.
that could help?
So super important, right? Super important. The number that people use to identify your home should be clean and easy to read. So that could be a number on your door. It could be a number on the mailbox. It could be a number on the side of the house. It should be clean and clear. People should be able to find you because that is associated to opportunities, right?
Okay. Okay.
And then the door, once you open the door should open noiselessly and all the way to 90 degrees.
Okay.
You shouldn't be struggling with anything. If you have to push your shoulder against the door to open the door, you have bad feng shui. So your door should open to at least 90 degrees freely without hitting anything, right? Then the first thing you see should be something beautiful. The first thing you see in your home. And even if you're on a shoestring budget, right? Maybe there's an old book or a magazine that has a very pretty picture on it. And you can cut that out and you can put that on your wall so that the first thing that you see is something beautiful.
Okay.
And that's the starting point. Feng Shui can be done with a huge budget and it can be done with no budget, just by reorganizing and using the things that you already have.
Lovely. Well, Moni, thank you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you,
And
Carla.
oh, you're very welcome. Could you tell again people how to get hold of you and maybe talk a little bit more about your courses that you offer?
Sure. So go to 9stepstofengshui.com. You can also go there by typing spacearrangement.com. That would forward you to 9stepstofengshui.com. I'm on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. My handle is at Feng Shui for Us, at Feng Shui for Us. And if you go to my website, there's going to be an item on the menu, on the main menu, that says free and low cost resources. So you click on that, you're going to see my books, you're going to see my groups, my communities, because I have a community where people can meet each other and learn how to turn their current homes into dream homes. And I also have these courses. The main thing that I offer for people with not a huge budget, right, is the Dream Home Lab, because for a monthly fee, you get access to all these courses and you get access to direct help from me. And so that is, because there's so much confusion in Feng Shui. There's a lot of things that you can do just by Googling or going to Pinterest, right? But Feng Shui is not one of them because there's a lot of bad information out there and it's so confusing. It's hard to implement. It can be expensive and it can affect your luck negatively. And so you need to make sure that you connect with a source of good knowledge that's going to have your back. And so go to 9stepstofengshui.com or spacearrangement.com and then look at the resources. And you can also apply to work with me directly if you want a one-on-one consultation.
Great. Great. Moni, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you being here, and we'll stop here for now, and maybe I can have you back another time and we can go more in depth.
I would love that.
Okay. All right. We'll plan on that then. And thank you everyone for watching. We appreciate you too. And you can find Moni's link below to contact her. So we'll catch you next week.